Coffee and Kurosawa, the friendly film crit podcast. I am Ben Filipkowski, your resident film freak.
And I am Farrah Sarpkaya, a person who loves film, but like in a super chill Henry Thomas as I live and breathe sort of way.
Today we're talking about the 2002 historical crime epic Gangs of New York, directed by Martin Scorsese. And just want to point out, I think this is the first Scorsese movie we're discussing on the podcast, so I'm excited about that. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Daniel Day-Lewis, Cameron Diaz, Brendan Gleeson, Jim Broadbent, John C. Reilly, and Henry Thomas. And just like last week's The Devil Wears Prada, Gangs of New York is set, where else? In New York City. Albeit 144 years earlier in the year 1862, against a backdrop of rising anti-immigrant tension and the looming threat of the American Civil War. In it, DiCaprio plays Amsterdam Vallon, a young Irish-American man hell-bent on killing Bill the Butcher Cutts. Cutts or Cutting? Bill Cutts, I think. To avenge the death of his father some 16 years earlier in a brutal gang war in New York's notorious Five Points neighborhood. Finding work as a thief upon his return to New York, Amsterdam starts to plot his revenge, but soon finds himself caught up in Bill's charismatic orbit, and even comes to see him as something of a father figure. And against that backdrop of anti-immigrant tension and the threat of the Civil War landing on New York City's doorsteps proper, Amsterdam is racked with internal conflict. He's caught between the desire to avenge his father, the guilt that he feels at becoming like a son to the butcher, and the potential for a better life away from the hellhole that is the 5 Points. Well, breaking point is close at hand, no matter how you cut it. And looking back at our past episodes, as I was saying, this is the first one we've done about a Scorsese movie, so cheers to that, cheers to us. And of course, I now have to ask, what did you think of this one, Farrah?
So I did check IMDb. It is Bill the Butcher Cutting.
Okay.
With an ing at the end. But this is not my first time seeing this movie. My husband Brandon is also a big fan of it. But it has been a hot minute since we watched it. And I do really enjoy it. The sets are absolutely phenomenal. The costuming is incredible, much like The Devil Wears Prada, fabulous clothes. And the acting, some of the Irish accents notwithstanding, is excellent, but that is to be expected from a Scorsese that has Leonardo DiCaprio, Cameron Diaz, Daniel Day-Lewis, etc., and a cast that goes on and on.
Yeah.
However, much like our Del Toro's Pinocchio episode a few months back, it didn't occur to me just how relevant it might feel, this movie, given just gestures wildly at the world. So that was fun, if we use that word to mean something besides, I don't know, it's weird. Anyway, there's a lot to unpack, and time, as they say, marches on. So let's talk about that march of time, because there's something very interesting that we see in all film, and especially things that are historically based, where we look at something and we go, oh, nothing has changed. The arguments that the politicians are making in this film are being made in the world. So talk to me about that a little bit. You're our resident history person. What's up with that, man?
Yeah, I think before we really dig into the thematic resonance in this day and age, I think that the thing that appeals to me about the history of this is that not only is this based on, a purported historical text from, I think it was 1927. Yeah, there's a book called The Gangs of New York from 1927. It is meant as a historical document of the historical gangs of the city of this period. So Scorsese found this book in 1970 or so, and immediately was like, I got to make a movie of this. This is before he had any of his breakout films. So this is like a long in development, long languishing project of passion for Scorsese to make. And I think a lot of the reading I've done up on it kind of suggests that for Scorsese, this is he thinks of this as one of his best pictures, or this was one of the projects he was most proud of, and that he thought was this is the magnum opus, or at least at the time he wanted this to be the thing that he's known for. I think it's certainly clear in hindsight these days that I think a lot of people would agree that Goodfellas is probably his best all around film. Anyways, that's beside the point. This is all set in a historical period. It starts in 18... Did I have my math right on this? I got the notes here. It kicks off about in the 1840s with this gang war, this huge, brutal gang fight between the nativist gang led by Bill the Butcher versus Priest Valens' Dead Rabbits, made up predominantly of Irish immigrants and new Irish Americans. And ultimately, it is just the nativists are they believe that they are Native Americans, that they are born to America, and that they are thus the rightful citizens of the country. And when I say Native Americans, I do not mean that they are indigenous peoples. I think in their mind they are indigenous in the sense that they are from America. They're white guys who do not like immigrants, is what their policy boils down to. That they do not like immigrants, they do not like people of color. The Dead Rabbits are just, they're Irish gangsters. They're trying to eke out whatever life they have here. It's worth noting that a lot of this is just pulled directly from historical anecdotes and historical accounts of these gangs existing. There were many nativist gangs. I don't think Bill's gang is ever given a proper name, but there are kind of implications that they are the Bowery Boys, who were a historical New York gang operating in the Five Points at that point in time. And all this to say, I think what these historical influences add up to is that this is a movie that is really about capturing a snapshot in time and using that as a lens through which we can see, at the time that we could see the America of 2002, and that now we can probably look at as an America of 2026, and indeed probably the world in 2026 in some regards. And I think this is a really fascinating movie because thematically, one of the central things in this movie is that passage of time. Bill is of the new world, but very much represents an old guard. He does not want things to change. He wants things to stay the same. He wants things to actually go back to a way that he knew them before. He's just this oppositional force to the march of time. And Amsterdam wants vengeance for these wrongs committed in his past. Amsterdam is an immigrant who winds up in a gang that probably somewhat anachronistically is a much more diverse gang than it would have been, historically. So in a way, you have Bill. Bill is of the new world and representing the old guard, and Amsterdam is of the old world and representing the future and progress to some extent. Immigration isn't going to stop just because Bill doesn't want it to, just because Bill does everything he can to harass Irish immigrants coming off the boats in the harbor. And I don't know. I think that this is a movie that is really about these collisions of perspectives and of times, really. And the ending of the movie, our final little shot of the movie, is that time lapse, right there. It's a time lapse. It's dealing with the passage of time so explicitly. And Amsterdam has his final voiceover about how this all seemed like the most important thing in the world, the most important thing happening, and it doesn't matter. And one day people will forget about it, and it'll be like we were never here at all. And I just think that's such a really profound statement that all these things occur, all these little bits of history. You have all these characters who are so central to everything going on in this community and indeed in the city of New York. Iconic figures. You have Happy Jack is the gangster turned sheriff. And you have Monk, who is this gangster turned barber figure, community figure. Bill is a gangster, but also deeply politically influential because of the power he wields on the streets. And Boss Tweed heads up Tammany Hall, and Tammany Hall was this political institution for years and years in New York City that fell by the wayside probably some 50 years after this movie ends. So I don't know. I think it's just this fascinating thing is that, like, and this is something that I've always been fascinated about with history, is that we're telling stories about things that would otherwise be forgotten. And I don't know, there's something about that in this that really grabs me, and particularly that, like, the passage of time. I think I said this in our Devil Wears Prada episode, but it'll make fools of us all, and, you know, time comes for us all. And I think that this is a movie that is acutely aware of that. It's fascinating to me how it plays with those ideas.
Yeah, I see what you mean with that, because, like, we've had this discussion in a few different episodes in different ways. Like, even I think we talked about it a little bit even with Mr. Rogers, where on the one hand we have these figures that loom large in the universe of our lives, and then time moves on and, like, they are irrelevant. Or even just the way that I see Britney Spears versus my niece sees Britney Spears versus how my mom would see Britney Spears or not. And, you know, how different those perspectives are versus, you know, step on a butterfly, change the universe, save the cheerleader, save the world, etc. Like, all these different things that we never know what is going to make an impact or where the world is going. Like, I think it was a Brennan Lee Mulligan interview recently where he's talking about how, like, people ask me if I could have predicted the TTRPG live play rise, and, like, of course I couldn't. Who would have thought, you know?
Yeah.
And films like this that capture the moments in history that were so important at the time and fundamentally shaped who the city became and what the city became, but also isn't remembered as, like, every single New Yorker knows the history of this thing necessarily. Or even if they did, every American or every person who's ever been to New York City doesn't know the history of this thing. That was so fundamental to them is really interesting. And one thing that I particularly noticed is this came out in 2002, but it only came out in 2002 because it got delayed a bunch of times. It was supposed to come out in 2001. And so the last shot of the film looking over New York City features the Twin Towers in 2002. And I was just like, wait. And I had to go and I looked it up of, like, when it was released, and, like, because I thought my brain was playing tricks on me. It's like, no, and just how that would have hit by itself, just that one last shot of New York City was so, it changes, right? Because even that, there are children nowadays that can drive and rent cars without being given a penalty that don't remember when they were there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And that is just such a, same as this film, this whole battle that occurred and this tension. No one's around to remember it anymore. So, you know.
Yeah. I think what is really interesting in all of that is, like, as much as we're talking about, like, these being, like, really significant events in history, I think the movie also makes an argument that, like, these are significant events to these characters. Yes. Like, the riot is a significant event in the history of New York. But ultimately, that winds up overshadowing everything going on in the 5 Points. And the 5 Points is still just one part of Manhattan. It's in lower Manhattan. It's really interesting looking at, like, the Google Street View from today. It's like there's a nice park there now. And high rises, like, it's just it ain't the hellhole that's presented. Obviously, it's not. But, like, so I think what's really interesting is that it's making this kind of argument that, like, no matter how important you think something is, at the end of the day, like, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and what might be huge for you is insignificant to your neighbor. And I think that is a really fascinating and interesting thing. And I think has been like a big focus of a lot of my kind of interest in history, is finding like those stories and kind of trying to document things that might otherwise be lost. And I don't know, I think this is a really existentially minded movie as a result, despite all these things, because yeah, it is building up this whole story of like, this is the most important thing that's ever going to happen. And the entire climax of the movie just completely undercuts that, and deliberately so. Yeah. And, and honestly, I keep coming back to that final shot. Amsterdam buries his father. I think he buries his father's knife in his next to his father's grave in Brooklyn. There's a small spoilers. Bill gets killed at the very end. Spoilers on a 24-year-old movie. But like, you know, Bill doesn't see the end credits, and Amsterdam erects a small, modest memorial next to the grave of his father. And then we get this time lapse, and the cemetery gets filled up. The first thing to go is Bill's gravestone. Well, they replace it with a stone one. Pardon?
They replace it with a stone one.
But it's also the first thing that goes. Like the monument to Bill. Yeah. Regardless of whether it gets replaced or not, the identifiable monument to Bill is the first thing that goes in that. Yeah. And Priest Valens' gravestone, his headstone, remains a bit longer. But, you know, we gradually realize that like we're looking over at Manhattan from Brooklyn, if it wasn't already clear. And then the Brooklyn Bridge is there. The rise of these skyscrapers is there. And it's just kind of this like, I don't know. I just, there's something about that like march of time and that voiceover that really grabs me. It's really affecting. And I think this movie really has a wonderful grasp of what time is. And as much as you think that like, oh, we're in the good days, or we're in like, this is what it's going to be like. Things are always changing. And I think that, you know, we talked a little bit about this in, again, our Devil Wears Prada episode. But like, you think of like, I think you and I can both think back to times where like, oh yeah, the good days. These are the good old days to some extent, obviously. But like, I can think back to like 2016, 2017, and I'm just thinking like, oh man, you know, like there was a lot of stuff going on in the world, but like my life was this thing for this period of time. Sure. And I think that this movie is such a good counterpoint to how we kind of get in our own heads about like, oh yeah, the good old days. And then it's over before you even realize it. And there's something, you know, maybe a little spooky about that, but also really like humanizing. So that's a lot of words to say, like they do the passage of time real good.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because my good old days is right now. I mean, despite everything that's going on outside, we are recording in February in 2026 right now. So there's a lot happening is what I'm saying in the world. But we just suffered a family loss just a few months before we hit record. And despite that, like, I think if I look at the sum total of my existence personally, this is probably the best time of my life personally, just between health things and mental health things and family things and all these things, right? But at the same time, like I said, the world is on fire. And also, you know, time marches on, and the things that you focus on are the things that are important. And we record in pairs. We did, in fact, just record The Devil Wears Prada. So, like, this is very top of mind. But this is not the only episode that we refer to this in, where if you are looking at a very specific part of something to the detriment of something else, that is what you are going to be hyper fixated on, right? Yeah. And, you know, as these characters live in this moment and make the choices that they make, how instrumental they are to where their lives end up going versus where they could have gone. Because at one point, you know, Johnny makes a choice to tell Bill that Amsterdam is the son of the priest.
Yeah.
At one point, Bill decides to basically torture the woman that Amsterdam is in love with right in front of him in a big old crowd of people. At one point, Amsterdam decides, I'm still gonna kill Bill, despite the fact that, I actually kind of like him.
Yeah.
He's actually kind of a good dude, despite, all of the atrocities. And every single one of these characters makes a decision that ultimately leads to this fight, but also is, to your point, completely erased by the fact that there are literal cannons being shot by literal ships in the harbor at the city, utterly destroying, half of the city.
Oh, yeah.
Where
whole
millions
blocks.
of people are rioting. Yeah. And their little petty squabbles mean nothing in the course of history, except they do, because it means a lot to them. And this would have been a very different movie if Amsterdam had, quote unquote, betrayed his father. But for all intents and purposes, Bill is like hero worshipping Amsterdam's father the whole time. He's like, he has a shrine to him. He honors him every year, like all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But what Amsterdam focuses on is, well, you killed my father, prepare to die. There is no etc. in there. And that one relatively small thing compared to the decimation of the city feels, almost 20 years later, now that he's all grown up, kind of insignificant in a way. And it's very human for him to just be like, nope, I don't care. I don't care that he's done all this. I don't care that he's this or that or this other whatever. I don't care that he's good to me. I don't care that he's kind or that he honors my father. But he killed him, so I have to kill him. That's just how the rules go. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think we get a lot of like that internalized conflict becomes externalized through just the what's going on in this movie. Like Amsterdam's whole thing of like Amsterdam's entire deal is basically Catholic guilt, I think. Like he's just but he's consumed by it, right? Like he knows that the thing that he wants to do is avenge his father.
Yep.
And then he starts finding himself liking Bill and looking up to Bill, and like he has a life and success because of Bill, and he's racked with this guilt because he did this thing to try and ingratiate himself initially, and it becomes this like all-consuming, like he just can't put up with it anymore. And we get even that bit, Monk finally confronts him, and he says, what does he say? I don't know if you're being too clever or too dumb, but whichever it is, just remember this much. For all his faults, your father was a man who loved his people. And so there's this kind of appeal to national identity, even though Monk has explicitly said numerous times, like, I'm not going to run with all these other Irish gangs. Like, you can hire me, but like I don't believe what you believe because I think all you guys want to do is fight. But he at least acknowledges that Priest Vallon was like trying to do more than just run a gang and fight other gangs. And I think like that kind of becomes this like angel on his shoulder moment for Amsterdam as he's as he and that's, I think it's like literally like 2 scenes later he makes his play to take out Bill. And I don't know, it's just there's just like a profound humanity to so much of this, which is such an odd thing to say because it is operating on this like grandiose operatic level or Shakespearean level. Yes, and as Monk describes Shakespeare, he's the guy who wrote the King James Bible.
I mean, you point out what Monk said there, but he also later says something to the effect of like, I don't know if your dad would have kept going.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like he lived long enough to be a hero, but not long enough to fall, basically.
Yeah.
Like, what if he'd won? Maybe he would be the new Butcher, you know,
Yeah.
with the power and the money and the influence and all these things, despite his best efforts. And, you know, that freezing his father in a moment in time when he was a hero for Amsterdam versus seeing Bill both as this, you know, larger than life, not hero, but like powerhouse that everybody looks up to because of all of the reasons, and yet only freezing him in that moment of time as a villain is just, it's just such a delightful, you know, we judge these characters as this one thing that they did rather than the sum total of their lives and weigh those against each other. You know, and I think this movie does a really good job with character study and building empathy for all parties involved, because at some points you're like, okay, Amsterdam, calm your butt. Like, calm down. What are you doing? You know, I think that happens throughout for all of the characters of, like, for me anyway, there are moments of you are insufferable to I see why you are insufferable. And that's, you know, that's just good storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just the way that they put, to an extent, mirroring like what Amsterdam's going through internally and putting that, writing that large on, I mean, you could argue that he's kind of at war with himself and he's like struggling with this dual heritage, this dual identity. He's like Irish, but he's an American at the same time.
Yeah.
And I mean, this conflict between the Irish and the American sides of him is ultimately what the movie's about and what it's dealing with as this central conflict. Yeah, it does a great job of creating these vivid characters and giving us reasons to like or dislike them. And even in disliking them, giving them some valorous qualities in some regards. Like, for as much as Bill is a bigot, a racist, and, you know, also heavily implied to be somewhat abusive in his treatment of women, he does, as you mentioned, he does have the little shrine to Priest Vallon. He has nothing but respect for Priest Vallon. I think he basically calls him like the best enemy he's ever had, the only man worth fight. Yeah, the only fight worth remembering, the only opponent that's worth honoring. And when he is finally dealing with Amsterdam's sudden but inevitable betrayal, he's there's an element of conflict to him because I think he has come to see Amsterdam like a son, despite, you know, this thing. So there's hurt, there's pain there, and I mean, like, and Bill was involved with Jenny. You know, I hesitate to say romantically. I think Jenny's read on it is romantic, but you know, there's a lot of grooming involved there, I think. And I think Bill has a tacit approval of Jenny and Amsterdam's relationship. Like, so there's like there's so much odd, weird, painful conflict between characters and themselves and other characters, and the movie just does such a great job of unearthing that and making that interesting and not just defaulting to violence and action all the time. Yeah.
I mean, even just like you said, the idea that he is both, he doesn't even know where in Ireland he's from.
Yeah.
Or where his dad is from. Where it's not clear how old he was when he came to the United States, but like, you know, I'm first-ish generation, and even I know where my family is from, but like, and I've been lucky enough to go there.
Yeah.
But, you know, I still get the questions, oh, where are you from? Well, I'm from Toronto is actually where I'm from. That's where I was born. But no one's ever asking that question. You know, they're asking something different. And the fact that Amsterdam struggles so hard with, I'm not a quote unquote native in the way that Bill defines a Native American, with a very distinct pause in the middle of those two words. But he also isn't really, he's been in the United States for multiple, probably at least a decade or two more than he was ever in Ireland.
Yeah.
And so Bill's definition of an American is something to the effect of like, you're willing to die for your country. Because I guess he fought in the Revolutionary War? I don't actually know exactly what his definition of willing to die for my country was, other than just that he was born here and is willing to fight for it, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Except for not in the Civil War.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are numerous shots, both of Amsterdam himself fighting for America, but also all of the Irish immigrants that are coming in. A lot of the time, it's just a straight shot of they get off the boat from Ireland, they are given a uniform, and they are sent to fight in the Civil War, and then their corpses come back. Like, it's just a chain that we see. And so, even Bill's definition here is flawed, but as Amsterdam struggles with what it means to be Irish versus Irish American versus just quote unquote American.
Yeah.
I think both that internalizing of that struggle and the externalizing of it, of loyalty to his father and his homeland versus loyalty to Bill and the here and now where he is making his life, is so beautifully represented in all of those struggles, in all of those attempts to hold on to the past, which inevitably, as we began with, marches on.
Continue. Time is inevitable. I think I really like that sequence because the sequence begins with, I think it's Bill's kind of expounding on his philosophies to Amsterdam on the docks, and he's criticizing the Irish for basically undercutting, quote unquote white workers, white American workers, and there's this Bill has that bigoted and racist view of Bill has no real respect for black people either, but he holds the Irish somehow below even that. So he has these degrees of his bigotry, these degrees of his hatred and intolerance, and a lot of it is just founded on completely, what we then immediately see are just completely false premises. Not to say that any racism is founded on an authentic premise, but the camera is following Amsterdam and Bill. Bill says something hurtful about the Irish, and then immediately turns to Amsterdam and says, "No offense." And Amsterdam says, "None taken. I came here when I was young, and I don't even remember." Da 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 da. And then we get that camera tracking over with the marching drums and the little, I think the tin pipe playing kind of an Irish melody, and the camera pans over, and you have the immigrants coming off of one boat. All the men get into a line. The men are told by, I think, a recruiting officer, "This is the document that gives you your citizenship. This is the document that makes you a soldier. Now go fight for your country." It's a little cartoonish, but it illustrates just it's this machine that's eating up the Irish immigrants in general, and basically saying now go fight, go die for the better life that you want right away. And then the camera continues panning, and you have the bodies being shipped home, and it's just, you sure about that, Bill? You sure about how good they have it compared to everyone else? And I don't know, it echoes, it resonates so strongly today, because I think we've dealt with at least a decade plus of just profoundly strong anti-immigrant sentiment, if not outright racist sentiment, pervading political life and public life. And oh man, it's rough. It's a little frustrating how resonant this feels to this day in that regard. And without digging too much into everything going on today, it's painful. It's painful. And
yeah.
I wish I had something more profound to say on that front. It's just, it's hard. It really sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, well, it's funny you say for the 10 plus years, it's always been there, man. Like my dad used like a more British surname in his career in carpentry because people were racist against him because he was Turkish.
Yeah.
Right? Like he used his mother's maiden name. And so like anti-immigration has been forever, right? And it's just the who that changes. And like in this film particularly, it's the Irish. Yeah. Later on in the world, it'll be the Italians. Later on, it'll be by POC and et cetera, et cetera. Like time marches on. Yeah. And the reasons that are always given, they're always nonsense. They're absolute trash.
Oh, yeah.
And, the other thing I love about this film, though, is that we see this and we see that his excuses are so dumb, as all racism is. Political statement here, insert racism is dumb. I hate it and it's nonsensical to me. But the other part of this that we see that resonates so incredibly well right now is the fact that we also see classism.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout this film, and how all of these people, Bill's main complaint in that scene that you mentioned is that the Irish will do a job for 5 cents that the black people will do for 10 cents that the white people used to do for 25.
Yeah.
If that doesn't sound familiar to anybody, go read a newspaper, because that's literally right now what is, and then we have all of these rich people that we see elsewhere that everyone else is fighting for all these scraps and fighting in the mud and the muck and whatever. And they put on their fancy hats and their lovely whatever. But like at the end of the day, all of these rich people look down on them as just like, whatever, disposable, send them off to war. And then later on in the film, the rioters are shouting basically, let the poor people stay home. Let the rich sons go to war.
Yeah.
And it's just so perfectly encapsulating of history throughout time immemorial and today that we find all these excuses for why we're different. And then you look and someone else is benefiting from all of this discord, and you're like, oh, right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think we should call that bit out explicitly, because you have a couple cutaways to what is the character? Who's the character? Character is a historical figure for sure. So I think it's so you have Boss William Tweed, played by Jim Broadbent, is basically like hobnobbing with the upper class, and this is an era that kind of immediately precedes the historical Gilded Age. Yeah. He's hobnobbing with John F. Schermerhorn, wealthy individual who was, I believe, involved in the presidency of Andrew Jackson, if I'm reading this right. And Schermerhorn says, well, we can always pay half the poor to kill the other half. And regardless of whatever, like the political stuff is here, we have the money that we can just influence the behavior that we need and we want. Yeah. I also just want to take a quick moment to call out that the Schermerhorn family is one of those like historic American dynasties of sorts and has many branches. Martin Scorsese's wife is a Schermerhorn, and Alison Brie. Alison Brie is the stage name for Alison Brie Schermerhorn. I think I'm not. The point here is not to call that. Not to be like, and they're all racist. Certainly not the point, but just I think that this is another interesting thing of like to put in someone with this family name has like it's not just a historical statement, but it is a commentary of like, these are like foundational figures to some extent of certain parts of American society and American life. Their legacies are long and complicated. And these, you know, you have individuals who have opaque connections to them. And I just think it's like, to me, that's another one of these like, man, I cannot articulate this, but it's like this other like historical kind of one of these hooks that to pull you in to be like, and also like, you know,
I mean, P.T. Barnum is a character, and his elephant runs away during one of the riots, and it's just like, oh, okay,
it's very.
It's
just off screen. P.T. Barnum is singing songs with Zendaya and Zac Efron in another movie. Yeah, I think the and way
that's not even.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just like the way that they kind of pull in the historicity is really effective and fascinating, and it's kind of a maybe a cynical look at it. I mean, Boss Tweed is a historical figure. Boss Tweed was apparently much more corrupt in real life than he is in this movie,
which is impressive.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because that doesn't even begin to talk about like the religion of it all, because like even just in the beginning, it's the Christians versus the Catholics, and that persists throughout. And there's like different sects of Christianity fighting in these four corners, and you've also got the Asian Americans that have come through as well, and it's just this a whole other levels and perspectives of culture and why, and enjoying culture but not respecting culture, and it's just it's such a snapshot of the world that tilt it just a little bit sideways, and it's a hologram of some other time, and you're like, oh yeah, same. But they do such a good job weaving it all together to make it feel modern, in a way, I suppose. Or at least recognizable, I guess, is a better way to put that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way that like a lot of these kind of divisions are pitted against each other is an interesting thing. I mean, like obviously, like Protestant versus Catholic is there's a historical conflict there. And thinking about it, I think one of the interesting things about the inclusion of Schermerhorn and that classism is that it points out that ultimately at the end of the day, the other divisions don't matter so much as the disparity between rich and poor. Like it ultimately boils down to have and have not. And that those disparities are going to be exploited for the benefit of those in power. It's, I don't know. Movie's messy. Movie's good. Movie has a lot to say, and I really like it for that. I'm trying to find the. There's a line. I think that Priest Valen says something about the true Lord. I've got some dialogue open here, because Bill's first line is like, "Is this it, priest? The Pope's new army?" And Bill also, at the end of like their big challenge that opens the movie, says, "Then may the Christian Lord guide my hand against your Roman popery." And like this whole like Catholic versus Protestant divide. There's a bit in there that there's a moment in the movie that I'm trying to place, but it kind of called to mind that like there has been so much historical like. Catholics experienced incongruously a fair amount of persecution in certain points of time and in certain areas, based on this like assumption that like, well, they're Catholic, so they're all going to vote the same way, or they're all going to exert political influence this way, therefore they cannot be allowed to have political influence. And you know, some historical justification for that attitude, but it is very odd to think of that in like our modern understanding of like Catholicism being the dominant form of Christianity, which is like the first or second most adhered to religion in the world. It might be the first. Just it's surreal that at the end of the day that these divisions are created, and I think that the movie does a good job of pointing out how absurd some of them are. Like, Bill has a number of Irish immigrants in his gang, and just like, that's not really an issue.
Except for that those Irish immigrants also they go to church to light a candle, to receive communion, etc. But the Irish gangs, like Amsterdam and his peers, are like, you can't be here because you're part of Bill's gang. And it's like, well, that doesn't... What? Because it doesn't change his faith necessarily. But the assumption is that, yes, it does. Because if you are of the Bill's gang of it all, you are accepting the new world and the new God and all these other things. And so,
I mean, like, it's just so frustrating because, like, Bill has this, like, one of those villainous... It's a quality that we're in a protagonist we admire, and in a villain you're kind of forced to respect. And his quality is that he does recognize that people are good at things. Like, yeah, sure, Bill hates the Irish, but McGloin is in his gang because McGloin's a good thug to have around. You know, he has Happy Jack, the sheriff, on his payroll because Happy Jack's good at his job at being a corrupt cop. And he's got that bit where he like, Happy Jack gets killed by Amsterdam, and speaking with Tweed, Bill's like, I could get rid of 6 of you more than I could spare one of him. And it's like, you know, Bill is not immune to the material impact of these people on the world around him. It's just that he lets his ideology continuously get in the way, even when Tweed's like, it's actually it's more expensive for you to be this racist. Like,
it's just bad business.
It's bad business. And Tweed's entire thing is like, Tweed is corrupt as all get out. But he's like, look, I don't really believe in this whole racism stuff. Whatever's going to get my people elected and keep me in power is what is the good thing. And like, and Tweed has this kind of gross pragmatism about it. He agrees to get Monk elected sheriff because he's like, there's no way they're going to spring for an Irish mayor. It's like, well, what about an alderman? It's like, well, we already have one of those. They're like, well, okay, what's the next best?
Than that?
What's better than that? It's like, well, you get at the sheriff. So there's like the collision of like politics and race and power and class is all just so interesting and messy in a rich way, I guess, is a good way to put it. And the way that, you know, race and class in particular are forced into these collisions is, the movie's kind of concerned ultimately with the material impacts of that, even if it doesn't so much focus on the effect on, you know, the black community in New York is kind of secondary to what the Irish are going through as far as the narrative of this movie is concerned. And I think that's a bit of a shame, because I think that a lot of the movie is ultimately concerned with, like, look, you're both being oppressed. It's just that one of you, by virtue of the color of your skin, is able to transcend that to some extent. And I think I do appreciate that we have, like, Jimmy Spoils in here, played by Lawrence Gillard Jr., is given so much time to be a character, even just a supporting role. And we do get him as a bit of a lens into what the black experience is like in this time. And I mean, it's not good.
No. And I think that harkens back to what we kind of started with, in that people are self-centered, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but this movie is so focused with the Irish experience in this time frame that it doesn't really care about the Black experience. That's a different movie.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think they could have done more with the intersection of race beyond just these two varieties of white, if you will.
Yeah.
But the fact that it focuses so hard just on Irish immigrants without too much, they have some conversation about it. Particularly, they do have some conversation around the fact that the war that they are currently trying to recruit for and ultimately have a draft for is the Civil War.
Yeah.
So, there is a lot to unpack there about race and, responsibility of people in places of privilege to protect other folks who are less privileged and so on, and what it means to fight for one's country and the people in it. Yeah. But the self-centeredness is in and of itself a feature, not a bug, because Amsterdam is so preoccupied with his own internal struggle of, am I American or am I Irish, that everything else doesn't really matter for him so much. Yeah. Because he's already fighting his own personal battle with this thing, and he doesn't look farther than that because it is not in his mind of import to him. Yeah. So I have mixed opinions around if that is a thing that would have made sense to explore in this film more so. If that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. I think the experience of, I will say to the movie's credit, it does include, you have Amsterdam. Amsterdam's as concerned about Jimmy and his well-being in the gang as he is anyone else. Yeah. Jimmy meets a very terrible end because he's cornered by the mob and beaten to death. Yeah. And I will also note that it's Jimmy's body that they find with the candle at the very end, and they kind of have an opportunity to pay their respects and lay him to rest. And I think I appreciate that is included. I appreciate that there is so much focus on how the people who suffer the most in these riots winds up being the people who are not they're not involved in it. It's the Black community in New York at the time is they're the real victims of this in so many ways because they are not remotely involved in what's going on in the riots. They are caught up. They are bystanders, and it's brutal. It's horrible, and I think also. It's also worth noting that historically that the depiction of race that they're doing in this would have been the historical norm. The idea that you have white people and then you have the Irish, you have the Italians, and you have on what, in this ideology would be a lower rung, or maybe an equal rung would be Black people as well. And it's awful. It's not good, but it is unfortunately what the norm was at that time. And I think I certainly don't have enough experience or insight to speak to what that all means now. I really don't. But I think that the movie, for what it is, with its limited perspective, does offer some glimpses of other perspectives as well.
Oh, for sure. We also have an entire Asian population that is
no lines
present.
Yeah. They're there, no dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. And the glimpses into how that culture is used as entertainment. They have a performance of Uncle Tom's Cabin in this. Yeah. In the movie. It's a whole thing. Oh yeah. And we have those glimpses, and they're all kind of on the sidelines of this personal struggle. And I think that's very human at the end of the day. That we see it now on all the scroll through your social media of your choice, and there will be self-care tips to sometimes you need to disconnect and just focus on the thing that's in front of you that you can change. Yeah. And you know what? Amsterdam does that. He logs out of, his chosen social media and focuses on his problem at hand, which is bill cutting.
Yeah.
And the Irish experience, and that's it. Everything else, sometimes he sees a tweet or a TikTok reel or whatever, but he's focused on this thing. And that's, that's very human and very relatable in a lot of ways, particularly in times of strife.
Yeah.
Societally and personally.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, Amsterdam spends the entire movie, he wants to be the one to kill Bill. Kill Bill. And
another great movie.
They finally have their gang war. They finally have the big showdown. And just as they're about to charge at each other, the cannons open fire to stop the riot happening elsewhere in the city. And it causes all sorts of chaos and havoc. They attempt to have their one-on-one fight. Bill gets killed. Bill, the killing blow for Bill, Bill's already dying when Amsterdam stabs him. Bill has been struck with shrapnel, is not long for this world, and Amsterdam just speeds him along. And Amsterdam clearly feels nothing good from this, and dies holding Bill's hand. And I don't know, man. It's just heavy. And then the rest of the movie is concerned with the fallout of the riots and and the riots and their impact on the Black community and other people in the city. And you have that the street is lined with bodies with candles so people can identify their loved ones or their friends and family. And it's just brutal.
And they're throwing bodies in pits.
Yeah.
Rather than burying them in a graveyard because there's just too many of them, or in a wood suit, I think is how it is described at some point. They're not given coffins because there's just too many people.
Yeah.
They also have a couple of shots where each of the gangs was wearing a different color. The natives were wearing a blue and the Irish were wearing red. And we see blue and red walking together, supporting each other and helping each other and providing first aid and all this stuff. And just the going back to how little it matters that we are different because we are all the same.
Well, yeah. And Sorry, I'm cutting you off because I'm just excited to say this. But in that final fight, they're all covered in ash. And it's now you're all just the same color. It doesn't matter what colors you're wearing. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. You're all the same now. And... and in that, as the troops advance, because this isn't the South. This is explicitly Union troops of the North of the Union who are coming in to quell the rebellion. This isn't the Civil War has arrived here. This is a riot, and we're putting it down. And
this is literally probably mostly Irish people, because those are the ones who've been pulled off the boat and thrown back on the boat to go fight.
And the troops march in. I think Bill has been mortally wounded at this point. McGloin sees the troops gunning people down and does a desperate charge at them, the suicidal charge. Gets shot 20 times, immediately drops. They come up to him and just put another bullet in him for good measure. He's so dead. But this, and McGloin's on the side of the nativists, and then it's Shang, who's one of the played by Stephen Graham, is in the Dead Rabbits, sees this happen and loses it and goes to try and fight the troops and just gets beaten to death himself. And it's everything that mattered doesn't matter anymore. And oh man, hits hard.
It sure does. It sure does.
And then we get that incredible time lapse at the end. The U2 Hands That Built America needle drop. Oh my God. Powerful. Mm-hmm. Incredible performances a truly incredible movie that is quite some of it can be quite difficult to watch, but it is a really well done movie. Daniel Day-Lewis, didn't even mention the fact that he plays Bill, really, but he's incredible in this.
Yes.
Gave himself pneumonia because he refused to wear a modern facsimile of a period coat and just wore a period accurate coat and caught pneumonia. Wore an extra thick contact lens to represent Bill's missing eye that has the American eagle on it, and ad-libbed the tap the knife on the fake eye to threaten someone.
It's awful.
It's awful. It's, man, that guy can act.
Yeah, sure can. You know who else can act? I don't know. Tell us. What other movies would you recommend?
Oh, man.
If you like this one. Yeah.
After this, I think, like, if you want to see, I think the Scorsese's magnum opus, you got to watch Goodfellas if you haven't seen it. Goodfellas is another kind of, as I think about it, is kind of about the passage of time, but in a different sort of context and setting. I really think that's a killer movie. More people should watch that. That's such a weird thing to say, though, because it's like, this is an iconic, Goodfellas is this iconic movie regarded as one of the best of all time. So I'm like, well, you should probably watch this hidden gem called Goodfellas. Goodfellas is really good. I think if you want kind of a bit of a change of pace set in a similar time, there was a show on HBO a few years back called Warrior, which is about the Chinese immigrant experience in San Francisco in this time period and the gangs that some of these communities formed. Has some really cool action and deals with a lot of really, really similar themes. I highly recommend that. What would you, Farrah? What would you recommend after watching a feel-good movie like Gangs of New York?
Yeah, I mean, The Departed.
Gives
me.
Okay, The Departed.
I love that
movie. The Departed might be. I think The Departed might be the best
right
Scorsese
choice, right?
movie. Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie. Maybe we'll talk about it one day.
Yeah.
I would also say The Godfather is a really interesting look at, and one day we won't release the Lost Godfather episode, I don't think, but one day we'll actually talk about The Godfather again in a reasonable, structured way. And it's a really interesting look at the immigrant experience and what it means to be American versus what it means to be an immigrant, and all sorts of stuff. And there was a Pixar movie recently whose name escapes me, but it was a fire person and a water person fall in love. Elemental, thank you. And that is obviously a very different tone of film, but interesting looks at culture and how we are different and also the same. So recommend that too. What I also recommend is finding us on Patreon as Coffee and Kurosawa. You can also find us on Blue Sky and Instagram as Coffee Kurosawa Pod. You can find me, Farrah Sarpkaya, on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Farrah Kaya, and at sarpkaya.ca, where I lend my voice as a voice actor. Ben, where can the people find you?
People can find me on Blue Skies at the Benjimon and on Letterboxd as at Benjimon. And that brings us to the close here. And, well, I would hope that it will not be like no one even knew we was ever here.
Just means we have to put out CDs, cassettes, and records of this podcast one day if we get really big, so that, for all the ages, people will hear our movie takes for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Amen.
For those of us what lived and died in them furious podcast days, we hope that not everything we knew will be mildly swept away.